This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Forgotten disease, pneumonia, now world's top killer of children. Emmanuel Macron hosts Paris Peace Forum to address global challenges. And Zimbabwe's government to relocate starving wild animals from arid southern parks. Hello and welcome to CGTN. This is Africa Live and I'm Karen Roberts in Nairobi. Also coming up in the programme. In business, South Africa's troubled national carrier plans fresh job cuts. And in sports, American athletics coach Alberto Salazar disputes his 4-year doping ban. We begin with health matters. The latest UNICEF report says pneumonia is the world's top killer of children. The report says the disease accounted for 800,000 deaths this year alone, which means one child died every 39 seconds. Here's more on that from Laura Walubengo.
The latest report by UNICEF detailing pneumonia prevalence rates in the year 2018 is not only astounding, but also eye-opening. It says 800,000 children died in the year, and pneumonia is to blame for the deaths. Nigeria tops the list with the highest cases, with India, Pakistan, Democratic Republic of Congo and Ethiopia following in that order. For years, malaria was said to be the top killer of children in the world. This might have led the world to focus more on eradicating the disease, thus rendering pneumonia as one of the forgotten but deadliest diseases. Most of the deaths hit children within their first month of life. This means that up to 2,200 children die daily due to pneumonia. Other diseases that are decimating children include diarrhea and malaria respectively. Despite the grim figures, pneumonia is preventable through proper vaccination. Low-cost antibiotics can also be used to treat the disease when and if diagnosed early. But those with severe cases of pneumonia require oxygen treatment, which is not easily available in most poor countries, especially in Africa. However, many children in affected countries go unvaccinated, yet others are living with weakened immune systems due to HIV/AIDS and malnutrition. UNICEF and other children's agencies are calling for more efforts to curb this disease. Pneumonia is a lung disease that is caused by bacteria, virus or fungi. Patients often gasp for breath as their lungs fill with fluids such as pus. Laura Walubengo, CGTN.
To France now, where the annual Paris Peace Forum is underway. World leaders and heads of government are seeking to address common challenges and maintain peace. The host, French President Emmanuel Macron, hopes the forum will help promote multilateralism. Held for the first time last year for the centenary of World War I, Macron wanted to demonstrate the power of reconciliation, a century after Europe was torn apart by one of history's bloodiest conflicts. The two-day summit will focus on topics such as peace and security, economic development, environmental issues and new technologies. Macron, DRC's President Felix Tshisekedi, Chinese Vice President Qishan Wang and European Commissioner Ursula von der Leyen are expected to deliver speeches. Days after an attack on a convoy of Semafo mine workers, one of the survivors has been talking about the incident. Here's the story of Joachim Wedrago, as told by Daniel Arapmoy.
Joachim Wedrago endures a constant pain in his backside. He survived the attack on a convoy of mine workers from Semafo gold mining farm. And this dampens the pain and rekindles the hope, maybe, for a better tomorrow. However, Memories of the incident continue clouding his mind.
The attackers did whatever they wanted with us from 9 to 10:30 in the morning, shooting at us. They then stopped for around 40 minutes. People thought that they had left and the survivors came out. We were all wondering if we should get out or wait for the rescuers. But there were wounded people who were looking for each other, and so we had to go and help. We got together and got out of the bus and walked to the wounded people. Most of them were asking for water because they had been shot.
The Canadian firm suspended operations at its Bogol gold mine until security for its workers is assured. At the Prime Minister's office, Semafo's CEO offered his condolences and an assurance of continued ties with the West African nation.
So, the meeting with the Prime Minister aimed firstly at offering our sympathy to the families and to the people of Burkina Faso. We have been with the Burkinabe people for many years. We want to see together how we can continue to collaborate whilst ensuring that we do it in a secure manner.
For Joachim, surviving the attack is one thing that he will forever be grateful for. But what about going back to his work?
I do not think that I will go back there again. I don't see the government putting in place enough security for us to use that route again. If they can have an aerial route, then that's fine. But I will never take a bus again to go and work there.
Like most countries in the Sahel region, Burkina Faso is battling a jihadist uprising by Al-Qaeda in ISIL. But there have been rumors that this attack could have been caused by misunderstandings between Semafo and local communities. Daniel Arab Moy, CGTN.
Chinese Vice Premier Sun Chunlan has been in Ghana on an official visit. She met with Ghanaian President Nana Akufo-Addo and his Vice President Bawumia in the capital Accra. The leaders agreed to boost bilateral ties and engagements. Recent years have seen growing political mutual trust and close high-level exchanges between the two countries. China is currently the second largest exporter to Ghana. Last year, Chinese President Xi Jinping and his Ghanaian counterpart Akufo-Addo reached a consensus on China-Ghana relations. They agreed to deepen exchange and cooperation in various fields ahead of their 60th anniversary of diplomatic ties. They also discussed ways to promote China-Ghanaian relations under the framework of the One Belt, One Road initiative and the China-Africa Cooperation Forum. Tuesday, 12/11 should have been the deadline for rival leaders President Kiir and Riek Machar to form a unity government after years of war. But the two leaders have agreed to postpone the exercise for at least 3 months. It's the third delay in the peace process. It followed the slow implementation process and disagreements on security arrangements and governance. It has been a long road to peace and plagued by hurdles. Robert Nagila takes us through the timeline.
South Sudan civil war broke out on the 15th of December 2013 after President Salva Kiir fired his deputy, Dr. Riek Machar. He accused Machar of attempting to overthrow the government. The first attempt at a peace deal backed by IGAD, the African Union and the international community was on January 23, 2014, when the two warring factions signed a ceasefire agreement. It fell apart after the rebel faction accused the government forces of violating the ceasefire. A second ceasefire on May 9, 2014 was signed in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. The single-page agreement allowed the opening of humanitarian corridors. But it soon collapsed, with both parties blaming each other for violating the truce. In August 2015, an agreement reinstating Dr. Riek Machar as vice president was signed by President Salva Kiir and Dr. Riek Machar. It also established a joint monitoring and evaluation commission, but quickly unraveled after fighting between government and rebel forces broke out outside South Sudan's presidential palace. President Kiir accused Machar of attempting to assassinate him. In September 2018, following mediation efforts by former Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir, the current peace agreement was signed. The deal stipulates that the two leaders share power and regional bodies deploy peacekeeping forces to supervise the permanent ceasefire. However, collapsing the various rebel units into a national army has been one of the issues frustrating full implementation of the deal. Back to you, Karen.
Well, let's get you more now on how the country is reacting to this day in South Sudan. I'm joined from Juba by CGTN's Patrick Oyet. Patrick, today should have been the deadline for rival leaders President Kiir and Riek Machar to form a unity government after years of war. What is the mood like now in South Sudan?
Yeah, Carol, the mood in South Sudan now is that of loss of hope. It is despondency because, since this current peace agreement was signed a year ago, there were a lot of positive things that happened and had generated a lot of hope to the people. The fighting stopped, ceasefire, of course, was holding, and, of course, opposition leader Riek Machar has come to Juba twice within this period, and people were hoping that, come today, the government would be formed, and that would actually mark the beginning of a long-lasting peace in the country. So with the postponement, people are not really, having much hope now. People are not sure whether, this peace deal implementation will keep on holding, because as long as the soldiers of opposition are on their own, the one of the government are on their own, any small, disagreement could spark off violence, which could actually go across the country. So there is loss of hope, there's resignation. People are just waiting now to see. And also in Juba today, President Salva Kiir has called for a national prayer led by a Nigerian evangelist. So the Christians are gathering to pray for the peace process. So basically, that is what is on the ground now.
So, Patrick, a loss of hope, but what are the South Sudanese people saying about the failure by their leaders to form a unity government?
Yes, there is divided opinion. There are those who think that, this is good. It's good that the postponement has taken place. There's a definite time. They'll wait for that time. They are accepting that this is a process. It may not take place as soon as they want, but it is good. It is better for the security sector reforms to be completed. Then they go into a transitional period where the army is unified, they are redeployed, and they would have more assurances of the peace process to move forward. However, there are those who are really concerned. They are saying they see as if opposition leader Riek Machar is being appeased, that every time he says something, it is what he says that is being followed. And they are also saying they are not sure if the peace deal will hold forever, because the soldiers who are in the cantonment sites, they are actually in a very dire situation. Some lack food, some do not have medical supplies, so any small thing could just let them leave the cantonment site and go. And remember, there are also those who are not even party to this agreement, who for the sake of peace, for the duration that has gone, at least have not been fighting. Anything could happen, and that would just, make the peace deal collapse. So there is divided opinion about this whole postponement issue.
And Patrick, finally, how do the people of South Sudan see the future of their country?
It is a very difficult situation for many here. Now it is very difficult for any South Sudanese to even try to invest in the country, because many people are saying it's like the destiny of the country is no longer in their hands. Because first of all, when it comes to this recent decision made by President Salva Kiir and Dr. Riek Machar, opposition leader in Kampala, the people were not really consulted. It was a matter of, the two leaders meeting in the presence of other leaders from the region and deciding to push the days by 100 more. And people are seeing like they do not have anything. The only thing they have is to wait for their leaders and perhaps pray to God and hope that things go well. So they do not know what will happen next, because they are asking even that, what about if the 100 days come and nothing has been achieved in terms of security sector reforms? Are you going to postpone the formation of the government again? So yeah, people are really resigned, and they feel like the future is not in their hands anymore.
Okay, thank you very much for that. That was CGTN's Patrick Oyet there in Juba. Moving on to other staying with South Sudan, in fact. Meanwhile, an assessment team from the UN mission in South Sudan has visited the town of Tambura. It's in the remote area of the Western Equatoria region in South Sudan. The team aims to monitor the situation on the ground following the extension of the pre-transitional period to form a new government of national unity. CGTN's Jane Keogh tells us more.
The journey to Tambura was not an easy one. The roads leading there were filled with mud, making them inaccessible due to the rainy season. Tambura had been accommodating internally displaced persons from the neighboring villages since conflict erupted in South Sudan. Many of the IDPs here are, however, hopeful that peace will prevail in South Sudan, especially after the formation of a transitional government.
Our village was destroyed, some of our relatives were killed, and we were left alone. All the elders were killed. I'm praying to God that peace will be implemented for our country to be peaceful.
Faith groups in the area have been working in collaboration with the UN mission to create conditions for peaceful coexistence among different communities here. So far, a lot has been achieved, including grassroots initiatives that resulted in the release of child soldiers earlier this year.
We were able to face the people in the bush, and we managed to bring out of the bush over 10,000 young men who were there ready to kill, ready to fight. And in fact, we were many times, I don't want to talk about how many times we were humiliated by these boys in the bush, but yet we kept on.
Combating hatred among the communities seems to be high on the list of priorities, but the faith groups and the UN mission say they will still pursue communities to make peace with one another. Jane Keogh, CGTN.
We are going to a short break now. Don't go away, lots more to come, including... After fanfare, new Zimbabwe banknotes failed to arrive. And Gambia files Rohingya genocide case against Myanmar at World Court.
Each day, there are millions of stories. Each one can open new perspectives, new possibilities. Wherever you look, we are there to see, discover, explore. We put the pieces together to find what really matters to you, all around the world, all around the clock. Our reporters are at home across the globe. From our headquarters in Beijing and production centers in Washington, Nairobi, and London, China Global Television Network. Stories from across the globe, reaching people across the globe. CGTN. See the difference.
Let's cross over to Zimbabwe now, where the new low-denomination banknotes failed to arrive, leaving banks in confusion and customers frustrated. The shortage of cash, along with shortages of staple goods, exacerbated by a long drought, has sent inflation to its highest since 2008, estimated at 380% year-on-year. Banking executives say that they have not yet received the expected new bills. They also say that there's been no communication from the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe about why the notes had not been distributed. In 2008, hyperinflation wiped out many Zimbabweans' pensions and savings and forced the southern African country to dump the Zimbabwe dollar currency. In June this year, the government unexpectedly ended a decade of dollarization by reintroducing the Zimbabwe dollar to give it more flexibility in shaping monetary policy. Well, CGTN's Farai Mwakatuya is in Harare and joins us for more on that story. Farai, what's happening with the new Zimbabwe banknotes?
Well, Karen, what we do know is that they were meant to be introduced yesterday, and there was a statement from the central bank yesterday saying that Monday was when the banks actually went to collect them from the central bank, and so the distribution to financial institutions happened Monday, and so that's why they weren't in banking halls yesterday when everyone expected to be collecting them from ATMs and over the counter. So what we do know is that the banks have taken receipt of those. A first tranche of about 30 million of those notes has been released and is in the banks. We're yet to see people who've actually withdrawn them, but we expect that it is the logistics of distributing them to different branches across the country that may be happening now, but we expect that certainly later today or during the course of this week, that money will now be available. It will be limited to withdrawals of $300 per week per person, but the central bank has said that it has injected 30 million, a first tranche of 30 million. In total, they're looking to inject about $1 billion over the next 6 months.
So some movement, but limited. How are banks and customers reacting to this?
Well, I think the reaction from customers is after yesterday when they were expecting to get this relief where people have been queuing for money and wanting to get it and failing to get it, people were a bit frustrated and confused as to what was happening. Banks, as you said, we went into some banking halls where we were checking, where the employees there said, look, we've been told it's supposed to happen, it's supposed to come through today, we haven't seen it. So they were also in a bit of a limbo. But I think many Zimbabweans are expectant that once these notes are introduced, hopefully they will bring some relief. They will ease the challenges they've had in terms of accessing cash, but they're also anxious that the distribution must be controlled. So A, it doesn't fuel inflation, but also B, we don't have a scenario where where we're coming from, where only a few people, a few cash barons, a few foreign currency dealers end up hoarding this cash, collecting and amassing all this cash, and then it doesn't go back into the formal banking sector. So those are some of the concerns and fears that people have. But I think most importantly, people just want to see this money, to get it out of the bank and put it in their pockets.
Okay, thank you very much for that. That was CGTN's Farai Mwakatuya there in Harare. Well, we are staying in Zimbabwe for our next story. Following the death of over 200 elephants due to starvation, authorities are planning to relocate hundreds of wild animals from a game park in the arid southern part of the country to 3 other parks. Here's CGTN's Farai Mwakatuya again with more.
The unprecedented move of some 600 elephants and dozens of lions, giraffes, zebras and antelopes, amongst other species, for distances of over 1,000 kilometers is expected to be the largest wildlife migration this country has ever undertaken. The drastic measure has been forced by a drought that has wiped out grazing areas and dried up waterholes at some national parks, claiming the lives of over 200 elephants and several other beasts. Previously, the Parks and Wildlife Management Authority has sunk boreholes in some parks to meet water demands during the dry seasons. The cash-strapped authority says it's enlisted the services of partners to assist with the migration to parks that have enough habitat to support the relocated wildlife. The move will start once the summer rains that are expected this week begin. Zimbabwe is experiencing its worst famine in living memory following an El Nino-induced drought in 2018. Farai Mwakatuya, CGTN, Harare, Zimbabwe.
Gambia has filed a case at the United Nations top court accusing Myanmar of committing genocide against its Rohingya Muslim minority. In its filing, Gambia has asked the International Court of Justice to grant provisional measures to make sure Myanmar immediately stops atrocities and genocide against its own Rohingya people. More than 730,000 Rohingya Muslims fled to neighbouring Bangladesh following a 2017 crackdown by Myanmar's military. UN investigators say the crackdown was executed with genocidal intent. Myanmar has a Buddhist majority. It, however, denies accusations of genocide and says its crackdown targeted militant separatists in Rakhine state. Well, we are now joined by Evans Ufeli, a lawyer based in Lagos, to further analyse this story for us. Thank you very much for joining us, Mr. Ufeli. Gambia has filed a case at the United Nations top court accusing Myanmar of committing genocide against its Rohingya Muslim minority. How significant would you say this case is?
Well, it is significant to the extent that Myanmar and Gambia have together signed the Genocide Convention Treaty in 1948. And to that extent, Gambia have such locus or such interest to raise issues of genocide because it is actually crime against humanity. Any person who feels for humanity can raise questions and then can raise issues against genocide. That is how significant I think it is, even though there could also be some religious interest, given that Rohini is a small Islamic country in Myanmar. And as such, that explains why Gambia, who also is an Islamic country, is taking this step to ensure that the community is preserved.
And Mr. Ufeli, Gambia is supported by the Organization for Islamic Cooperation. What other dynamics are at work here, would you say?
So I didn't get that clear.
Yes, I'm just saying that Gambia is supported by the Organization for Islamic
Cooperation.
Yes, I'm repeating it, Mr. Ufeli. Gambia is supported by the Organization for Islamic Cooperation. What other dynamics would you say are at work here?
Yes, well, they are supported because, like I said, that Gambia is an Islamic state. And they've been supported by 57 other nations and then other countries and Islamic organization is to show that the interest, the religious interest, okay, that they have on Rohini in Myanmar is what is playing out possibly this way. Because when you look at the country itself, Myanmar, which is in Asia, and then looking at Gambia, which is in Africa, you will begin to ask yourself, what is the relationship? I mean, what is the economic value, or what is the concern, given that both countries are sovereign states, okay? But if you look at it deeply, you'll find out that apart from the fact that we're talking about genocide, which is a crime against humanity, we're also, the country, Gambia and the Islamic organizations are also looking into the issue of religious concern. That given that Rohini is an Islamic state and has been brutalized by the Myanmar soldiers or military team, there is this concern that the community, the Rohini community, should not be wiped away just like that. I think that is what is fueling and creating the interest that Gambia have in that community. The Attorney General of Gambia have said it, that it's going to make sure that the case of the genocide, the case is taken further to ensure that justice is served in that country.
Okay, thank you very much for that analysis. That was Evans Ufeli there, a lawyer based in Lagos. Thank you. Moving on to other news now. The Chinese and Greek leaders have discussed cooperation between culture and civilizations. Chinese President Xi Jinping said the two ancient civilizations share common or similar visions. He proposed deepening cultural exchanges, mutual learning and safeguarding multilateralism. Xi also called for the facilitation of transportation and the China-Europe Land-Sea Express line. Greek President Prokopis Pavlopoulos said Greece strongly opposes the so-called clash of civilizations theory. Tourism and maritime transportation are Greek pillar industries. Greece held a cultural year in China in 2007, and the country's first Confucius Institute opened in Athens in 2009. Greece's Prime Minister was one of many world leaders at the Global Trade Expo in Shanghai, which wrapped up on Sunday. Kyriakos Mitsotakis said the two countries have much in common in terms of values, culture and history.
Greece and China look at each other respectfully as ancient civilizations, going back thousands of years. Both countries have not just moved with the wheel of history, they have shaped it. Confucius and Aristotle addressed fundamental issues regarding ethics, morality, and the notion of a virtuous life. The world, including political leaders, would be very well served if their teachings regained the prominence that they deserve.
Well, after their leaders' meetings on Monday, the two sides issued a joint statement outlining their plans to enhance cooperation in a number of areas. Wang Hui explains.
Both countries believe their relations have made significant progress since diplomatic ties were established 47 years ago. They agreed to deepen their comprehensive strategic partnership based on mutual respect and mutual benefits. On the political front, they agreed their foreign ministries will strengthen political consultations. Greece has reaffirmed the One China principle over the Taiwan issue, and China has reaffirmed its support for European integration. In terms of economy, they agreed to help build an open world economy, oppose all forms of protectionism and unilateralism. They also said they are willing to maintain the multilateral trading system with the World Trade Organization at the core. In April, Greece joined the China, Central and Eastern European countries cooperation mechanism. Greece says it wants to play a positive role in the group and help to better connect China and those countries. They also said they are going to work closer under the Belt and Road Initiative, especially on the port of Piraeus, among other key projects. Greece will establish a consulate general in Chengdu, the capital of Sichuan province in southwest China. They will also facilitate cooperation in many other areas, including agriculture, technology innovation, ecological protection, and the maritime economy. China and Greece are two ancient cultures. The two nations have agreed to strengthen their cultural exchanges and work closely in archaeology, cultural heritage, arts, education, and tourism. Wang Hui, CGTN, Beijing.
After this stop in Greece, the Chinese president will head to Brazil to attend this year's summit of the BRICS countries. They are the developing nations of Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa. China and Brazil are also marking 45 years of diplomatic ties. The Chinese ambassador to Brazil, Yang Wenming, says the relationship between the two countries is a model of how developing economies can work together.
In the past 45 years, the relationship between China and Brazil has achieved a high level of development. China has become one of Brazil's largest sources of foreign investment. The total amount has reached $80 billion. More than 300 Chinese companies have established branches and offices in Brazil. The cooperation of two countries not only covers mining and agriculture, but also boosts technology areas such as satellites, artificial intelligence, and the Internet of Things and 5G.
Now to Hong Kong, where protests have entered the 24th week. This morning, the city's chief executive, Carrie Lam, said it was selfish for violent protesters to try to bring down the city's transport system. She also said authorities will restart transportation facilities and continue to protect public safety.
The SAR government's transport department will keep a close eye on the current situation while taking corresponding measures. We will keep the locals updated on the traffic conditions. For the transportation facilities which were destroyed, especially some routes, related departments will rush to the scene and launch repairs. We will keep providing service for the people. The SAR government hopes to provide a safe and high-quality environment for the local people to continue their daily lives as soon as possible.
We have all the business news coming up for you after the break, including South Africa's troubled national carrier plans fresh job cuts. And Alibaba Singles Day smashes $38 billion in sales record.
Images may appear to be identical, but looks can be deceiving. The difference is not always obvious. It has to be discovered. There are always different sides to a story. We put the focus on the details. To see more, to understand better. See GTN. See the difference.
South African Airways has announced a restructuring plan that will cut its workforce by almost a fifth. The airline says that it has started talks with labour unions about the process. At least 944 employees of the cash-strapped state carrier will be let go. The carrier plans to reorganise all its SAA divisions and departments. However, it excludes its low-cost arm Mango Air Chiefs and the SAA Technical Unit. Over the years, SAA has incurred over $2 billion in cumulative losses. As part of the turnaround plans, the state would pay off SAA's government-guaranteed debt of over $600 million over the next 3 years. Last week, media reports suggested that UK billionaire and founder of Virgin Airlines, Richard Branson, was interested in buying a stake at the national airline. Africa's biggest pay TV group, MultiChoice's half-year profits have leaped to 22%. This comes as the firm cuts losses outside of its home market, South Africa. Foreign exchange swings during the period worked in the firm's favour. The company said last week its profits for the period could increase by up to 25%. Its headline earnings per share, which is the main profit measure in South Africa, stood at 341 cents for the 6 months to September. This compares to 78 cents in 2018. MultiChoice has said that its performance had benefited from tight cost controls and the lower depreciation of the rand against the US dollar. The Democratic Republic of Congo's President Felix Tshisekedi says his government wants to boost the country's budget for next year by almost 60% to $10 billion. According to the Congolese president, the increase is meant to fight poverty. The announcement comes after the International Monetary Fund criticized the DRC's budgeting process. The fund said the country needs to increase its revenue collection. The Democratic Republic of Congo relies almost entirely on mining, but its mineral riches have done little to alleviate poverty there. Most recently, it's been hampered by a weak cobalt price, which has dropped more than 60% since March 2018. DR Congo and the IMF are discussing the possibility of a loan program. The IMF halted its last program in 2012 over concerns about corruption in the mining sector. More than 2,000 delegates are meeting at the Sandton Convention Centre for 3 days of networking, discussions and deal-making. It's the second Africa Investment Forum taking place in South Africa. CGTN's Angelo Coppola has more.
The organisers have built the forum as a transactional investment marketplace. Last year's meetings gathered deals valued at around $38.7 billion in 3 days. Expectations are higher this year, and that's being driven by the African Continental Free Trade Area and a desire to take back control of the continent's future.
We also want to generate our own energy. We want to see greater local beneficiation in our mining and minerals industries. We want to produce our own goods for our own domestic markets and for export. We want to be able to stitch, to stamp, and to chisel the words proudly made in Rwanda, proudly made in Ghana, proudly made in Mozambique, proudly made in Togo, and proudly made in South Africa. Garments, mobile phones, computers, and cars, you name it, we want it to be made here.
Part of that drive will involve changing the investment narrative, which includes a rebranding and a repositioning of the continent, which appears to be attracting investor interest.
That we have at the forum several institutional investors from Africa and outside of Africa. The size of the assets under management in Africa is over $1.8 trillion. Globally, assets under management exceeds $145 billion. What's needed to close the $68 to $108 billion annual infrastructure finance gap for Africa is to leverage institutional investors. And for that, we must develop more bankable projects, develop wider pools of risk mitigation instruments, and standardize our product offerings as multilateral development banks and financial institutions.
Delegates have had high expectations for the inaugural forum. Most of those expectations were met. The SkyTrain in Accra, Ghana, is a case in point.
I was here last year when this was initiated, and I'm also here to see that this critical step towards the consummation of this project is being taken this afternoon. It is vivid testimony of the value of the African Investment Forum. The consortium is led by a Ghanaian, and that we have to come here to Johannesburg to meet another Ghanaian, to do business for Ghana. Somehow or other, I don't know, it works out, I think.
The talking part of this three-day meeting is now over. It's now down to those boardrooms behind closed doors where the deals and the negotiations actually start. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Sandton, South Africa.
The China-based new development bank, the BRICS Bank, has approved more than $8 billion in loans for projects in its 5 partner countries. Brazil's allotment tops $620 million, much of it devoted to renewable energy projects. Our correspondent in Brazil, Paulo Cabral, visited a wind energy park in the country's northeast that benefited from the resources.
In this part of Brazil's impoverished northeast, known as the Sertão, the backwoods, the land is dry and rain scarce for most of the year. Not many crops thrive in these conditions. But manioc, also known as cassava, will grow here, and most small farmers cultivate it to make starch and flour, a staple food ingredient for many people in this region. There is also lots of strong and constant wind, and such wind has become a source of energy for the country and income for hundreds of families here who are paid rental for the use of their land for wind turbines. Some landowners here with larger areas have up to a dozen turbines set up in their properties, and that does give them some good rental money. But the biggest impact we see here is in the lives of smaller farmers, usually poorer ones, who have space for 1 or 2 turbines. For them, the extra money can make a big difference. José Valdecir da Silva has 2 of these turbines set up on his land. The company that owns them pays the equivalent of about $400 per month for each one.
Some of the people decided to lease their lands and others didn't. Those who didn't now regret it because they're not getting the money. For us who did it, it's good. It's not a whole lot of money, but it's very helpful now because manioc prices are very low.
The Ventos do Araripe Wind Energy Park was built by Brazilian company Casa dos Ventos and completed in 2017. It was partially funded with resources from the China-based New Development Bank, the NDB, also called the BRICS Bank. That NDB funding here in Ventos do Araripe came to about $67 million out of a total of $621 million allocated by the bank for projects across Brazil between 2016 and 2018.
Important to have the support of NDB, not only as a financial standpoint to enhance our capability for the project, but also they bring a lot of experience on structuring these kinds of projects.
The mayor of the 14,000 inhabitants town of Simões, where most of the park's turbines are located, says the 300 towers set up in their territory make a big difference for the city.
The wind park has certainly helped the farmers around here because they receive an income from the use of their land. And this income also helps to boost the local economy and benefits all citizens.
There are many opportunities for investment in infrastructure in Brazil, including those with great potential to improve people's lives. Brazilians will no doubt continue to look to international institutions like the New Development Bank to help make these projects a reality. Paulo Cabral, CGTN, Simões, in Brazil.
China's annual November the 11th shopping blitz, or Double 11, has wrapped up with yet another sales record. An estimated 500 million shoppers from China to Russia swarmed e-commerce giant Alibaba's sites to scoop up everything from Apple products to Ugandan mangoes. CGTN's Wu Lei brings you up to speed.
The GMV of 2019 a new e-commerce world record. Alibaba Group Holding recorded nearly 270 billion yuan, about $38 billion in transactions, a sharp increase from the 50 million yuan after the first Singles' Day just 10 years ago. At one point on Monday, more than 500,000 orders were being processed every second. A spokesperson for Tmall, Alibaba's business-to-consumer e-commerce retail platform, said there are 3 reasons behind the big sales numbers.
This year, we can see more consumer groups have joined the online shopping, and an increasing part of them are enjoying new shopping experience through live streaming. And we also see a sales surging of new joint brands.
More than 200,000 brands, many with global recognition, participated in the Tmall Online Shopping Festival, offering a variety of quality goods.
The increasing number of product categories reflects the diversification and customization of consumer needs. More demand will always lead to more innovative products in the markets.
In addition to the online shopping frenzy, most shopping malls, supermarkets and retail stores also joined the annual ritual, offering various coupons and discounts. Try it before you buy it. No matter if it's an online deal or a brick-and-mortar store promotion, many say Double 11 Shopping Festival has become an Olympic competition for all brands. They are using every strategy they have to win over more customers. Many consumers say they have more options than ever, which makes them shop in a more rational way.
I won't choose the brand randomly. I will only buy something that suits me well and buy it after comparing prices from different channels.
Billions of online deals could lead to almost as many parcels. Many Chinese express delivery companies are using robotics to improve efficiency and calling on consumers to recycle shipping containers for greener consumption. Many say Double 11 is not only a shopping event, but it has evolved into an annual test of technology, innovation and sustainable growth. Wu Lei, CGTN, Hangzhou.
All the sport coming up after the break, including American athletics coach Alberto Salazar disputes his 4-year doping ban.
How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa. Were you born to be a player? Could this moment be yours?